Well, Bill Gates wants to use AI, that's artificial intelligence, to revolutionize healthcare. And some researchers are warning that maybe that's not a good idea. So we're going to tell you exactly what he and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation intends to do with healthcare, how it might actually help them instead of poor people, and why this may not be a good idea. Now, anytime we see the words Bill Gates and helping poor people, we need to ask ourselves these questions. Okay, number one, what liberties do said poor people have to give up for this privilege of being Bill Gates' guinea pigs? That's one. What data will they be selling to him or giving up? And what is the profit possibility for Bill Gates and his enterprises? So it turns out there are worrying answers to all of these questions for this new initiative from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Let's take a look at it for ourselves. They announced earlier this year in August that they were launching a fund to use artificial intelligence for healthcare in low-income communities. Here's how they put it. They say they're going to get a group of 50 grant recipients who are developing global health and development solutions for their communities using AI-enabled large language models. We're going to talk about what that is for a second, with the goal of reducing global inequality. So they're saying this is mostly for people, and they're going to use large language models. What those are models that sort of take in and learn from us and then come up with solutions. So it's like a vacuum of human experience and human knowledge, and then it's a computer that expands on that. I don't know if that's a very good analysis, but let me know if that makes sense to you. Now, here's some examples that they give of the types of things they want to research, like helping frontline healthcare workers in India, where one woman dies every 20 minutes in childbirth. Improve the management of high-risk pregnancies, tailor agricultural advice to smallholder farms in Uganda, provide teacher coaching to improve educational outcomes in Mali, give critical financial advice through a voice-to-text interface to rural women farmers and business owners in Nigeria. Okay, well, what's wrong with that? Sounds like a nice idea, right? Well, here's what researchers are warning. This comes from a group of sociologists out of the University of Vermont, Oxford, and University of Cape Town. They say that they do not like this Gates Foundation AI initiative because as much as this magic bullet can solve issues, they, as bullets, are also capable of wounding and causing harm. Now, they cite three main reasons that we should be worried about the Gates Foundation using LLM, this language modeling, to help poor people because of what these unintended consequences may be, and how if we're not paying attention, this will happen.
Well, they love testing. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation loves testing these things out first on poor people. They love using Africa, by the way, as a hotbed of testing. Right. So this is not a surprise at all.
Yes, and it comes... Go ahead, please.
As Whitney Webb pointed out, also, like, so did his old dinner buddy,
Jeffrey Epstein.
Mr. Epstein was very big into funding research on poor people in Africa.
Exactly, because they're not going to go to they're not going to get on CNN and complain about it.
Right.
So they don't have a voice, and so that's where you test these things.
Yes. Okay. The first problem they say is that LLM has to learn from something. So the data that it pulls in and sucks in this vacuum is problematic in the first place because these programs learn from humans, and we should humbly accept and admit that humans are flawed. So LLM will be flawed in the same way because it starts learning from our programs. In fact, research last year already showed that these language models replicate human biases and ethics. So if they're just sort of automated versions of us, but they already have human flaws, is that progress? And does it sort of help underserved communities if it's based on these already problematic assumptions about underserved communities, right? So if you think about this, like, what are some assumptions you make about poor people or hygiene, sexual practices, that kind of thing that might be fundamentally flawed? Well, how is LLM supposed to know that if our understanding of it is flawed? Another worry that these researchers point out is the conflict of interest that means for healthcare providers and how this concentrates power in the hand of companies like Microsoft. They say at the end of the day, the hard, sharp edges of capital, command, and control are in the hands of very few entities and individuals, notably including the conflictingly interested Microsoft, which has self-invested more than $10 billion in OpenAI. So another big concern is surveillance. Should the Bill Gates Foundation get access to survey poor people in exchange for improvement? They call this intrusive, manipulative, and extracted targeted sales advertisements. This surveillance apparatus will be wielded by political actors in states to control discourse on social media, conduct surveillance on citizen activity, and manipulate political opinion and voter behavior. Now, those of us with maybe, upwardly mobile lives and a voice may not go for this and say, no, thank you, don't follow me around, Bill Gates. I don't need you to know this stuff. But who's going to speak for the most vulnerable populations? Nobody. They provide a hot test bed of data surveillance. It says the absence of democratic governments of these tools is a grave and growing threat. Finally, they caution that the idea that AI can solve like worker shortages and stuff like, oh, we just don't have enough nurses to help these people in poorer communities, and so we need someone to do data entry or take phone calls. It's probably not ever going to give any poor community better care by automating these things rather than giving them a real person. Here are some examples of what they say. This do more with less heuristic mindset is always mobilized to undermine proposals of expanded social care for the impoverished. Slouching towards hallucination of efficiency, he says these neoliberal ethos perpetually moves towards hollowing out the material content of services provided to the poor. Experience a debilitating and dangerous psychotic break, you can now just type in with the algorithmic therapist. Well, that's not better, right? Well-trained care. Think about this. If you're going through psychosis and they're like, oh, well, there's no real doctors for you, but here's a chat bot. Does that make you feel better? Don't self-harm. You shouldn't do that, right? These are just, are you poor and facing the terrifying experience of gender-based violence? Well, the provision of a lawyer capable of struggling for legal justice is just not going to be cost effective, but here's a robot-generated text app guide. So again, these things should never replace. So while those of us who can afford real people care, the rest of you just use AI, I'm sure that will be fine. It's not going to be better. It won't be better for anyone, so we shouldn't buy this BS. Here's what the authors say we should not do. They're saying that we should not let unelected people make decisions for ordering our society. Says the Gates active dissemination of these tools is little more than an instance of crass philanthrocapitalist. That's not an easy one. Philanthrocapitalist profit extraction. And so I'd never heard that word before. I think even though it's hard to say and it's hyphenated in a weird place, philanthrocapitalist, like pretending that you are trying to do something for good, but really it's a capitalistic endeavor. It's profit extraction. It is handing over democratic control. So what do you think what they think here is that we must fight back. These are really strong words from a sociologist who is looking at this and saying no, but we're dealing with Bill Gates here, who has already said that he's bullish on AI. He thinks it's one of the best technologies of his lifetime with the biggest potential. Remember, he wrote about this in March, and this article said the age of AI has begun, telling us all the hopes and dreams he has for this. But he himself warned about the possibility of AI sharing things without your permission. Here's how he put it. Well, we might have to work some things out, he said. For example, can an insurance company ask your agent things about you without your permission? Your agent, meaning your AI agent. If so, how many people will choose not to use it? Like, you're going to have this, personal assistant, and a lender can just go in and ask personal questions. He also said, oh, yes, it could kill us. Remember this? He said, could a machine decide that humans are a threat and conclude that its interests are different from ours or simply stop caring about us? Possibly, but the problem is no more urgent today than it was before the AI developments of the past few months. I mean, I don't know what machine was deciding to kill us before AI. Go ahead, David.
Well, do you remember that when Microsoft released that AI bot on Twitter, and within 24 hours they had to pull it off of Twitter because it had become a racist Hitler supporter?
No, I don't remember that.
Racist Hitler
And that was
supporter.
a Microsoft test. So
Yikes.
they had to pull it because, like,
Yeah, that
and,
was-
and so that, you remember that, Philip?
They called it Zelensky.
Yeah, I remember that several years back.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So do we really want to give it the power, artificial intelligence, to learn about bodies of poor people, take control of their health, report to Microsoft in the name of philanthrocapitalism? You know, the scary situation here that comes to my mind is that AI learns more about, human behaviors, how the human body works. It has control of all our food and medicine, as these grants said, and then it decides that humans are BS and it poisons us, and that's the end of the story through our food supply and medicines, right? Because it's decided to do that. And we don't know any
it's
better
also
because it's
programmed-
too smart for us to know what it's up to. And we gave it that power by allowing it to experiment on poor people. So that's a choice
Well,
I'd
it's
say
also
we'd regret.
programmed Yeah, and it's programmed with a bias. So it's like we talked about Google with the data inoculation. I mean, they're going to basically be able to say, okay, these are the parameters, and so it's like we got to get everybody on these drugs or whatever the end goal is to make them money. They can program it into that, and then yes, it will learn, but it will learn within those parameters and focus on whatever they want the outcome to be.
Yeah. So let us know what you think. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say even more nefarious though is not just that like letting AI do machine learning from human language, but when you're giving people at the top this power, they're going to be programming it in. It's like
Yeah.
you buy a Samsung TV and it all of a sudden has advertisements on it. Like that you paid for the TV, but it's a smart TV. But we're just going to throw some advertisements in there. Like, well, if I'm using an AI chatbot for my therapy, and it's just recommending, hey, there's this new drug from
Yeah.
Pfizer that I highly recommend. And it's like they
Right.
can program it. It's not just learning; they can actually manipulate the output, like intentionally.
Exactly what Google Bard. I mean, exactly like ChatGPT, right? You're feeding it information.
Yeah.
And so if you're feeding this type of information to recommend certain medications and drugs and so forth that Bill Gates is profiting off of,
Yeah.
right? That's inevitable. I mean, that's inevitable. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.